The Atlantis is an earlier Indonesia. Book. Part 3. Santosaba works. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies and studies, in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. INDONÄSIARYÄ. By Santosaba. Exploration and Research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62 813 2132 9787. Atlantis. Atlantis. Not Atlantis. Is it true that King Namrud, descendant of Noah, giant founding of Babylon? After the Great Flood receded, those who survived came down from the mountains and settled in the lowlands, including Namrud, starting to build a new civilization. All of this happened when Sumer, Egypt and the Indus River Valley civilization suddenly emerged with a very high rate of progress, even though it had existed before and returned after the disaster. Sumerian society began at the peak of its development due to mysterious growing knowledge and the white Aryan race, according to legend, from the Red Planet. They expanded the area from the Caucasus Mountains and into Sumeria, Egypt and the Indus Valley, even though conventional history recognizes that there were highly developed societies that suddenly emerged. There are some creatures that are not purely from the human lineage. It is said that the giant race, Titan, is a half-blood line from genetic manipulation. The beginning of the spread of the Aryan mixed lineage after the floods receded, especially in southern Babylon and the Sumerian region along the Euphrates River. Babylon is much earlier than previously believed, and is one of the first cities after the flood, where mystery and secret organizations around the world originated from this city. According to ancient texts and legends, the founder of Babylon was King Nimrod, who ruled with Queen Semiramis. King Namrud is depicted as a mighty tyrant and one of the descendants of a race of giants who lived after Noah's great flood. The Arabs believe that after the catastrophic flood, King Namrud rebuilt the amazing structure in Baalbek, Lebanon with 3 stones weighing 800 tons each. He ruled over what is currently Lebanon, the center of Namrud's first empire being Babylon, Akkad in the land of Sinir, Samaria. King Namrud expanded his territory into Assyria to build cities like Nineveh, where many Sumerian tablets were found. Kings Namrud and Semiramis came from a mixed lineage known as Titans. The giant race or Titan is one of the descendants of Noah. Previous texts mention a baby resulting from the marriage of humans and a white race. In the text of Genesis, it is stated that the father of King Namrud is Cush. He is known as Bel or Belus, the son of Ham and the grandson of Noah. Cush is known as the god Hermes, which means son of Ham. Ham or Chem is interpreted as on fire, and may be connected to sun worship, burning, and possibly connected to sun worship, a network of gods emerging from Babylon and later connected to Egypt. King Namrud and Queen Semiramis are still considered the principal deities to this day, although they are known by many different names and symbols. Namrud is represented as fish, and Queen Semiramis is symbolized by fish and doves. Namrud is depicted as the fish god Dagon, half human, half fish. Queen Semiramis was depicted as a fish because the Babylonians believed that the fish was a symbol of the goddess of love, which was later used in religious and architectural symbolism, where Semiramis was depicted as a dove holding an olive branch. Semiramis is taken from the evolution of the name of the Indian god, Sami Rama Isi or Semiramis. A fish and a dove are 2 symbols that are still widely used today in religious rituals and national ceremonies, although most of the people involved do not know their true meaning. Semiramis was called the Queen of Heaven, Rhea, the Virgin God, and was sometimes known as Mother Earth, Ninkarsag. She is also worshipped under the name Astarte, the woman who made the tower, in reference to the Tower of Babylon, Babel, which was once built by King Namrud. The Aryan and Babylonian mixed descent wore the horned headgear that was worn by King Namrud. Where the horns symbolized the king's authority and later became a metal headband with 3 horns that symbolized the king's power with divine power. These represent symbols that can be found throughout modern royal regalia. Unlocking the secrets of the human civilization of the Aad, the Tower of Babel, Atlantis, Atlas, Aditya's Devas, and Thamud. To analyze more deeply about the Aad, let us look at the verses regarding the Aad in the Quran. Do you do not believe, and wonder that a warning came to you from your Lord that was brought by a man among you to warn you? And remember all of you when Allah made you as a substitute, in power, after the disappearance of Noah's people, and God has exaggerated the strength of your body and stature. Then remember the blessings of Allah so that you will have good luck. Surah Al-Raf. 69. As for the people of Aad, they boast in the face of the earth without the right reason and say, who is greater in strength than us? And do they not notice that Allah who created them is greater in strength than they are? And as they deny our signs, strength. Qs al-Fushalat. 15. Al-Quran al-Fajr, 6-8. 6. Did you not pay attention to how your Lord acted against the people of Aad? 7. Namely, residents of Aram who have tall buildings. 8. That has never been built, a city like that, in other lands, and also in Ad's story, when we sent to them the wind that destroys, the wind did not let a single thing through it, but made it like powder. Qs. Ad-Zariyat. 41-42. As for the people of Aad, they have been destroyed by a very cold, very strong wind. Surat al-Haqqa. 6. If they turn away, then say, I have warned you with a thunderbolt, like a thunderbolt that befell the people of Ad in the ocean. Surah Fushalat. 13. As for the people of Aad, they boast in the face of the earth without the right reason and say, who is greater in strength than us? And do they not notice that Allah who created them is greater in strength than they are? And as they deny our signs, strength. Qs al-Fushalat. 15. So we blew very thunderous winds upon them on these few unlucky days, for we wanted to feel to them the humiliating torment of the life of the world. And surely the torment of the hereafter is more humiliating, while they are not being given help. Qs. Fushalat 16. Al-Quran Asi Siwara, 128-130. 128. Do you build on any high land a building for fun? 129. And you make fortresses with the intention that you are immortal in the world. 130. And when you torment, then you torment as cruel and ruthless people. As for the people of Ad, they have been destroyed by a very cold, very strong wind, which Allah brought upon them the wind for 7 nights and 8 days continuously. Then you see the people of Ad at that time dying limping as if they were stumps of date palms that were empty, rotten. Surah Al-Haqqa. 6-7. The following summary is a description of the Aad people. 1. The heir, successor of the Prophet Noah as. 2. Have a physical giant, large. 3. Build very tall buildings that have never been built by other nations on this earth. 4. Arrogant and like to torture other nations. 5. Destroyed by wind and lightning for 7 nights, 8 consecutive days. Point number 3, in my opinion, is very interesting because it seems similar to the mythology of the world's tallest building, namely the mythology of the Tower of Babel. This mythology is also mentioned in the Bible Genesis, chapter 11 right after the Great Flood. It is said that there used to be only one language, and then humans went to the east and erected a very high tower in a place called Shinar. Genesis chapter 11. 1. The whole earth is one language. 2. And it came to pass, when they departed to the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they lived there. 3. They said to each other, let us make bricks and burn them down. And they have bricks for stone, and paste to glue them together. 4. And they said, let us build a city, and a tower, with its top in heaven, and let us make our names, until we are scattered all over the surface of the earth. 5. According to the Book of Jubilee, this Tower of Babel has a height of 2,484 meters. 6. And they began to build, and in the 4th week they made bricks with fire, and the bricks served them to get the stone, and the clay with which they strengthened it. With the material is asphalt that comes out of the sea, and comes out of the fountain in the land of Shinar. And they built it. 43 years they built it. The width is 203 bricks, and the height of the bricks is the third. It is 5,433 cubits high and 2 palms tall, and spread of one wall 13 stades and another 30 stades. Jubilees 102021, Charles's 1913 translation. The Jubilee book mentions the height of the tower as 5,433 cubits and 2 palms, or 2,484 meters, 8,150 feet, roughly 3 times the height of the Burj Khalifa, or roughly 1.6 miles in height. Baruch mentions that the tower reaches a height of 463 cubits, or 211.8 meters, 695 feet, higher than any structure. It was built in human history until the construction of the Eiffel Tower in 1889, which is 324 meters, 1,063 feet, high. If we compare the tallest building in the world today as the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which is only 829.8 meters high and was only built in 2010. Mount Merapi is about 2,930 meters high from sea level, so the Tower of Babel, 2,484 meters, is a little shorter than Mount Merapi, 2,930 meters, but about 3 times the height of the Burj Khalifa Tower in Dubai, 829.8 meters. Closing parenthesis. The building must have broken through the clouds. If it's true the AAD people who made it, maybe this is what made them arrogant. Back in the mid-1990s, there were designs by some Japanese engineers to make exceed 4,800-story buildings with a height of 4,000 meters, but this project was not realized, possibly due to financial and technical reasons. The mythology of the Tower of Babel is also found in various tribes around the world. Another story, attributed to the historian Fernando de Alva Cortés Ixtlilxochitl, c.1565-1648, to the ancient Toltecs, states that after humans had multiplied after the Great Flood, they erected tall zacuali or towers, to guard themselves in the event of a second flood. However, their language was confused and they went to separate parts of the earth. Still another story, attributed to the Indian Tohono O'odham, holds that Montezuma escaped a great flood, then became evil and tried to build a house that reached heaven, but the Great Spirit destroyed it with lightning. Bancroft, Volume 3, p. 76, also in History of Arizona. According to David Livingstone, the African he met living near Lake Nami in 1849 had such a tradition, but with the builder's head split open by the fall of the scaffolding. Missionary Journey, Chapter 26. In his 1918 book Folklore in the Old Testament, Scottish social anthropologist Sir James George Fraser documents similarities between Old Testament stories, such as the flood, and indigenous legends around the world. He identifies Livingstone with a fairy tale found in Lozi mythology, in which evil men build a pillar tower to chase after the god creator, Nyamb, who had fled to heaven with cobwebs, but the people perished when the pillar collapsed. He next tells a similar story about Ashanti replacing a pile of alu porridge for poles. Fraser also cites such legends found among the Congolese, as well as in Tanzania, where people stick poles or trees in an unsuccessful attempt to reach the moon. He further quotes the Karbi and Kuki people of Assam who have similar stories. The tradition of the Karen people of Myanmar, which Fraser considers to exhibit a clear Abrahamic influence, also relates that their ancestors migrated there after the abandonment of a large pagoda on the land of the 30th generation of Karenni from Adam, when the languages were confused and Karen separated from Karenni. He notes another version currently in the Admiralty Islands where human language is confused after a failed attempt to build a home to heaven. Somewhat similar traces of stories have also been reported among Taru in Nepal and northern India. The Babylonian story, as told by Abedinus, says that once men built a tall tower in which is now Babylon, and when it was close to heaven, the gods sent the winds and ruined the whole plan. And man, having up to that time all spoke up about the same thing, and recorded in culture as if it were from the gods of many languages. Quote, this tradition of burning the skies destroying the minarets is also a hallmark of some Mesoamerican accounts. For example, the legend recorded by Pedro de los Rios regarding the base of the Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico. After the waters of deluge recede, one of the survivors is welcomed to Cholula, where he begins to build a large building. It used to be the aim was to lift the great building into the clouds, but the gods, offended by his assumption, threw the fire of heaven into the pyramid, many workers died, and the building remained unfinished. J. G. Fraser, Folklore in Old Testament Volume 1, London, 1918. Another Mexican tradition, recorded by Diego Duran in 1579, relates the names of the giants who built a tower that almost reached the sky, when it was destroyed by lightning. On Hau Island, part of the island of Tuamotu, or Tuamotu, in Polynesia, people used to say that after the Great Flood, the children of Rata, who had survived, attempted to erect a building with which they could reach the sky and see the creator god Vatia, or Atea. But, God in anger pursued the builders, destroyed the building, and changed their language, so they spoke in tongues. In the archipelago, the Tower of Babel is depicted on Borobudur. This illustrates that the nations around Babel had also visited the Lemuria civilization before Atlantis came to the archipelago. Borobudur is a monument made by the Lemurian civilization, which is the central area of the Great Empire. This is reflected in the monument that was made, which indicates many reliefs with faces that are not local residents of the archipelago. Pay attention to the similarities in the shape of the Tower of Babel with the reliefs in Borobudur. Also pay attention to the human figure that hovers above the altitude. Were there any former people who had the ability to fly over the Earth's gravity? Only the Lemurians could do it. Levitation hovered above the Earth's surface. The Lemurian civilization and culture in the archipelago, which underlies the teachings of Hinduism and Buddhism in India, the knowledge and lessons developed by Buddhists about levitation, which are still adhered to by several strict Buddhist sects, by the Bhiksu, which are kept secret and still exist today. So Borobudur is a monument where previous people gathered to learn about progress. The original teachings of the archipelago were not Hindu or Buddhist, let alone animism and dynamism, not. It is the teachings of the archipelago that underlie the teachings of Hinduism and Buddhism in India. If we study the history of the spread of Hinduism from India, it has never been recorded that Hindu missionaries spread their teachings, because this is a prohibition for Bhiksu in India. Let us return to the discussion of the Ad people as the ancestors of immigrants in the archipelago, namely the Atlantis civilization that would later develop in the archipelago, which at the peak of the Atlantic civilization was Queen Bilqis with the Saba Empire, which later Prophet Suleiman would straighten out the teachings of Matahari Saba in the archipelago. This is reflected in the relief of the lower part of Borobudur, which is currently being covered by reasons of the safety of the building. On the part of the covered relief, there are some unresolved reliefs, because those demons who worked to leave their work to perfect Borobudur went scattered, after knowing Solomon died. The people of Aad were destroyed by an all-powerful wind sent by Allah SWT. As for Aad, they have been destroyed by a very cold, very strong wind QS. Al-Haqqa, 69. And also in Ad's story, when we sent them the wind that destroys, the wind did not let anything go through, but made it like powder. Surah Ad-Zariyat 41 and 42. So we blew very thunderous winds upon them on these few unlucky days, for we wanted to feel to them the humiliating torment of the life of the world. And surely the torment of the hereafter is more humiliating, while they are not given help. Surah Fussilat 16. And from several references, the Tower of Babel was destroyed by the wind in between. However, in other sources such as the Book of Jubilees, chapter 10 v.18-27, Cornelius Alexander, Frag. 10, Abedinus, Frags. 5 and 6, Josephus, Antiquities 1.4.3, and the Sibylline Oracles e. 117-129. God overturns the tower with a great wind. Here are other references that the Tower of Babel was destroyed by the wind. Many sources relate to the destruction of the Tower of Babel, according to the story of the culture in Mexico, that the calamity was caused by strong winds. Sibyl is said to have the prophecy. When filled with threats from the great God with which he threatened mankind, when formerly in the land of Assyria they built a tower, and all from one word, and want to rise even until they climb to the starry heavens, then the immortal raised a fierce wind and gave them strong need. For when the winds threw down the mighty tower, then rise up among mankind with bitter strife and full of hatred. One language was turned into many dialects of languages, and the earth was filled with tribes and kings. The Babylonian story, as told by Abedinus, says that once human civilization built a tall tower in which is now Babylon, and when it was close to heaven, the gods sent the winds and ruined the whole plan. And men, after that time all spoke the same language, from the gods to creating many languages. Apart from the wind, Allah SWT also sent lightning to destroy the people of Aad. If they turn away, then say, I have warned you with a thunderbolt, like a thunderbolt that befell the people of Ad in the ocean. Surah Fushilat 13. And this incident of the tower that was destroyed by lightning is still recorded in several mythologies. Other accounts suggest that there was a strong lightning current, perhaps from an overly large ionosphere, and found a contact body or ground in the tall structure. According to a tradition known to 12th century explorer Benjamin of Tudela, a fire from heaven fell in the center of the tower and destroyed it. Sanhedrin 11 Tract, Fol 109a, Seder Nezikin, Transil. By H. Friedman, ed. by I. Epstein, London, 1935 p. 748. The tradition of burning the heavens destroying the towers is also a feature of some Mesoamerican records. For example, the legend recorded by Pedro de los Rios regarding the base of the Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico. After the waters' deluge had receded, one of the survivors of Welcome to Cholula, where he began to build a large building. That was the aim, to lift the great building into the clouds, but the gods, offended by his presumption, threw the fires of heaven into the pyramids, many workers died, and the building remained unfinished. J. G. Fraser. Folklore, Old Testament. London, 1918. Fraser adds that, it is said that at the time of the Spanish conquest, the inhabitants of Cholula recorded with great reverence a large aerolite, which they think was a thunderbolt which fell on the pyramid and burned it. Cf. E. B. Tyler, Anahuac, page 277. Another Mexican tradition, recorded by Diego Duran in 1579, knowing the giant who built a tower that almost reached the sky, when it was crushed by lightning. In summary, there are three factors supporting the allegation that the Aad people are the nation that built the tallest tower in the world, or the Tower of Babel. 1. The verse in the Quran tells of the very tall buildings built by the Aad and never built by any other nation on this earth. 2. The Tower of Babel is the tallest tower on earth. The Aad are the successors of the prophet Noah, as according to the Quran, the Tower of Babel was also built after the Great Flood incident. 3. The Aad were destroyed by the wind and thunder. The Tower of Babel was also destroyed by the wind and thunder. 4. My guess is very strong that the possibility of the Aad people is the nation that built the tallest tower in the world, namely the Tower of Babel. And this makes us interested in examining another possibility, namely the relationship between the Aad people and the mythological character Atlas. 5. There are several similarities, including 1. In terms of the names Aad and Atlas have similar prefixes. As additional information, the Aad people are often referred to by the Arabs as the Adites. The word Adites is close to the word Adityas, which in Indian mythology describes the Devas. The Adityas in Indian mythology have many similarities with the Titans in Greek mythology. One of the similarities is that they are both giants. One of the members of the Titans in Greek mythology is Atlas. 2. Both are giants. 3. The Aad are the successors of the prophet Noah, as whereas in Greek mythology the father of Atlas is Iapetus. Iapetus is often suspected of being Japheth, one of the sons of Noah, the U.S. In the Bible, Genesis 9:27 states, God will raise, physically, Japheth. So Japheth and his descendants have gigantic physiques. 4. Atlas is always symbolized as a support for heaven and earth. But actually Atlas is also symbolized as the holder, maker of the pillars that hold heaven and earth. This is told in Homer's Iliad story. And this is also reinforced by the story of the Pillars of Hercules, where Hercules temporarily holds the pillars that had been held by Atlas. These pillars were probably so high that they almost touched the sky. Compared with the pillars of the Aad people, who are told are also very high. And in addition to info, Atalas in Sanskrit also means pillar. 5. Researchers estimate that the ancestors of the Arabs, namely the Adites, were descendants of a person named Ad, the grandson of Ham bin Na. According to Plato, the founder of Atlantis is Poseidon. The researchers argue that it is likely that Poseidon is Sidon bin Canaan bin Ham bin Na. Sidon is the grandson of Ham bin Na. Meanwhile, Atlas was the son of Poseidon and the first king of Atlantis according to Plato. 6. The Aad are depicted as people who are proud of their strength and like to torture ruthlessly and cruelly. The Titans, of which Atlas is one of them, are a group of giants that used to rule the world. After that, because of their cruelty, God destroyed them. One of the 12 workers of the hero Heracles is to retrieve some of the golden apples growing in Hera's garden, which are tended by Atlas's daughter, Hesperides, and guarded by the dragon Ladon. Heracles went to Atlas and offered to lift the sky while Atlas took apples from his children. On his return with the apples, however, Atlas attempted to trick Heracles into permanently lifting the heavens by offering to give up the apple himself, just as one who deliberately takes a burden has to carry it forever, or until someone else takes it. Heracles, guessing that Atlas didn't mean to return, pretended to agree to Atlas's offer, only asking that Atlas took up the sky again for a few minutes so Heracles could rearrange his robe like a pillow on his shoulders. When Atlas put down the apple and took the sky on his shoulder again, Heracles took the apple and ran. In some versions, Heracles instead built 2 great pillars of Hercules to hold the heavens away from the earth, freeing Atlas just as he freed Prometheus. 68. Homer's Iliad. Easy read, with Homer's description of Atlas, holding tall pillars that guard the divided earth and heaven. Robert Graves. Iapetus has been identified with Japhet, son of Noah, by virtue of their similarity of names and the old Jewish treaty tradition, which made Japhet the ancestor of the Greeks, Slavs, Teutons, Dravidians, Josephus, Antiquities of the Jew. Iapetus is associated with 11th century theologian Yaheth Matthew Poole and more recently by John Pearman Brown. The Bible, Genesis 9:27, may God enlarge Japheth, and let him live in Shem's tents, and let Canaan be his servant. Atlas itself according to Plato's Critias text is the king and the first son of the founder of Atlantis, Poseidon. In this mountain lived an ancient human named Evenor, and he had a wife named Leucippe, and they had their only daughter who was called Cleito. The girl had already reached maturity, when her father and mother died, Poseidon falling in love with her and having sex with her, and breaking the land, covering the hills where she lives all round, making the alternate zone of sea and land larger and smaller, circling each other. There are 2 earths and 3 waters, which he ignites by puncturing them, each of which has a perimeter far in all directions. The center, so that no one can get to the island, for ships and shipping does not yet exist. He himself, being the master, found no difficulty in making special arrangements for the central island, brought 2 springs from beneath the earth, one warm water and the other cold, and made every variety of food grow abundantly from the land. He also raised 5 pairs of twin boys, and dividing the island of Atlantis into 10 parts, he gave to the firstborn. Fix his mother's dwelling and allotment around him, which is the greatest and the best, and make him king over the rest. The other he made princes, and gave them power over many people, and large territories. And he named them all. The oldest, who was the first king, was named Atlas, and after him all the islands and seas were called Atlantic. Atlantic in ancient Greek means, island of Atlas. Let us examine his story above in Poseidon's words. The Sunda land continent is a continent that has 3 large islands as mentioned by the plateau, namely the island which now forms the Sulawesi archipelago. Java, Sumatra and Kalimantan used to be one unit and once a whole continent which is now Australia. On the island of Poseidon is what Plato told, and today the word still exists in Sundanese culture with the words Pasundan. Atlas itself according to Plato's Critias text is the king and the first son of the founder of Atlantis, Poseidon, Pasundan. Note again about, on this mountain lived an ancient human born named Evenor, and he had a wife named Leucippe, and they have only daughter who is called Cleito. There is a similarity in the name of the daughter of the Evenor marriage. With Leucippe namely Cleito and Cheeto building. The similarity with the sacred Cheeto or Setha building is located in Duku Setha, Gumung village, Genoa district, Karanganyar Regency, Central Java province. It is said that the name Setha, which in Javanese means clear, is used as the name of the hamlet where the Setha building is located because from Setha hamlet people can clearly go in various directions. To the north there is a view of Karanganyar and Solo city against the backdrop of Mount Merbabu and Merapi and, further afield, the summit of Mount Suming. To the west and east you can see green hills stretching out, while to the south you can see the back and children of Mount Lau. The Setha building is a group of buildings consisting of 11 terraces that stretch east-west. The first terrace is located on the east side, the higher it gets to the west. Each of the terraces is connected by a door and a walkway that seems to divide the patio courtyard into two sides. On the east side of the lowest terrace there is a gate which is the gate of the Setha building complex. In front of the gate there is a stone statue called the Nyai Gamong Aram statue. On the south side of the first terrace there is a building without walls that stands on a foundation about 2 meters high. Inside the building there is an arrangement. At the western end of the path that crosses the courtyard of the first terrace is a stone archway with stone steps. The stairs to the next terrace are flanked by a pair of statues of Nyai Agni. Only one of the two statues is still somewhat intact, that is, it still has a head. On the second terrace, there is a stone arrangement that spreads out in the courtyard, forming an image of an eagle flying with wings spread. On the back of the eagle there is a stone arrangement depicting a turtle. Right above the head of the eagle is a stone arrangement in the shape of a shining sun, isosceles triangle and kalachakra, male genitalia. At the end of each of the eagle wings are two other forms of the sun. Garuda is Vishnu's vehicle bird which symbolizes the world above, while the turtle which is the incarnation of Vishnu is a symbol of the underworld. Turtles are considered powerful animals capable of diving into the ocean to get water of life Tirtha Amrita. The presence of Kalachakra on this page causes the Setha building to be called the Lanong, male temple. The sun shines 7, symbolizing the sun which is believed to be the source of life force. The isosceles triangle represents the guide for a world sinking into a sea of darkness. In the center of the isosceles triangle is a circle containing 3 frogs, each facing a different angle. In each triangle there is a painting of a lizard. On the heavy line dividing the east side there is a crowned eel with a crab on the south side and mimi, a type of sea animal, on the north side. The whole form is a picture of hope for fertility, both soil and human fertility. The triangle with the male genital shape at the top symbolizes the unity of woman and man, two beings that are opposite in nature but inseparable from each other, as a symbol of the small universe, microcosm, within humans. On the west side of the second terrace, each on the left and right of the stairs leading to the next terrace, you can see 2 rooms that only have the foundation left. The stairs leading to the next terrace are andesite stones, which are not neatly arranged. On the left and right of the stairs there are stone ruins that are not clearly visible. The third terrace is a yard that is not too wide. As found on the previous terrace, on the west side of this terrace there are also a couple of rooms that flank the path leading to the stairs to a higher terrace. In the room there is a stone arrangement forming a rectangle stretching from north to south. On the stone walls, there are reliefs depicting people and animals. It is said that the relief is an excerpt from the Song of Sudamala. Relief with the theme Kidung Sudamala is also found in the Suku building. This relief reinforces the notion that the Setha building was built for Ruwadan purposes. The stairs leading to the next terrace are made of andesite, which is very neatly arranged, made of terraces with a fairly wide landing at each level. The cliffs around and to the right of the stairs are supported by stacked stone sheet piles. No information was obtained whether this ladder was the result of a previous renovation or was an original ladder. On the inner, west, side of the fourth terrace, there are a pair of statues of Bhima guarding a stone staircase leading to the fifth terrace. The fifth terrace is a courtyard with a pair of roofed buildings, called the outer pendapa. The building without walls flanks the path leading to the stairs to the sixth terrace. On the west side of the sixth terrace, at the foot of the stairs, there is a Kalachakra statue and a pair of Ganesha statues. The stairs to the seventh terrace are also very neatly arranged and are made of 3 levels. The cliffs on the left and right of the stairs are reinforced with stone sheeting. At the top of the stairs is a gate which is the entrance to the seventh terrace, which is a courtyard surrounded by stone walls. Similar to the outer pavilion, on this terrace there is also a pair of roofed pendapa without walls. This terrace is called the Pendapa Dalam. On the west side of the inner hall, there are stairs leading to the next terrace. The eighth terrace is a room used for prayer. In front of the door of the room are 2 stone statues with writing. On the west side, at the back of the room, was a staircase leading to the 9th terrace. On the left and right of the west side of the 9th terrace there is a room facing east. The 2 rooms functioned as a storage area for ancient objects. On the east side, opposite each of the storage rooms were 2 buildings. The building on the north side contains the Sabdapalan statue and the south side contains the Nyagangong statue. Both of them were figures of Punakawan, caregivers and advisors of the kingdom, at that time. The west side of the ninth terrace is bordered by a stone wall that serves as a gate to enter a passage of stone steps leading to a room on the 10th terrace. On each side of this room there are 3 wooden buildings facing each other. In each building there is a statue. One of the rows of statues located in the north row is a statue. In the southern row, again, there is a Kalachakra statue. The western end of the south row is the storage place for Umpu Supa's heirloom. Umpu Supa was a well-known and respected Umpu, heirloom weapon maker, during his lifetime. The west side of the 10th terrace is bordered by a stone wall that serves as a gate to enter a stone staircase leading to the 11th terrace. At the top of the hall there is a stone wall about 1.60 meters high which divides the stairs from the main room, in the form of a roofless building surrounded by stone walls almost 2 meters high, with an area of about 5 square meters. This main room is located higher than all the other rooms, so that from this place can be seen clearly the spaces below. The main Setha building is located in the backyard and on the highest terrace facing the top of the mountain. This reflects the belief that the sacredness of the building is part of the natural surroundings. The architecture of the Setha building is based on the concept that the gods do not reside in the sky, but on the top of the mountain. Mountains are the visible and invisible source of energy. Whereas the main building of this temple is precisely located at the top and most backyard, is different from the concept of ancient stone buildings in general which places the front space as the center of all activities, similar to that found in Panataran, Blatar. In the far west of the Setha building complex, on a rather high plain, there is a sendong, or pool where the king's concubines and their maids bathe. The Setha building is closely related to Suku, which is relatively close to each other. Suku is located on the lower ground when compared to Setha. We already know that the source of the story that Plato got was the main source written in stone which was obtained from ancient priests in Egypt. Egyptian civilization was a civilization that developed and had a major source in the archipelago, namely the Lemurian civilization period. In the Atlantis era that developed in the land of the archipelago at the end of the Lemurian period, the story of Poseidon and Cleitho is the story of the predecessors in the archipelago. The name Chetho is identical to Plato's version of Cleitho. And in the depiction of the Chetho building it clearly describes the noble relationship between 2 types of humans, namely men and women as the source of life. Returning to the discussion of Atlantis and the source of his ancestors who later inhabited the archipelago as the traditional folk who were noted down and rewritten by Plato, as the nation of Atlantis. Nimrod Enum. Ard Hebrew. Modern Nimrod Tiberian Nimrod. Aramaic. Arabic. Namrud king of Shinar, according to the Book of Genesis and the Book of Chronicles, son of Cush and great-grandson of Noah. The first mention of Nimrod is in the Table of Nations. He is described as the son of Cush, grandson of Ham, and great-grandson of Noah, and as mighty on earth, and mighty hunter before God. In the Hebrew and Christian traditions, Nimrod is considered the leader of those who built the Tower of Babel on the land of Shinar. According to Frank Joseph, the author of the book, The Atlantis Encyclopedia, there are several similarities between the Adites and the Atlanteans, including 1. The Aad people are known for their city with high pillars. According to Plato, Atlanteans had a tradition of sacrificing animals in front of pillars. 2. The Aad had giant physiques similar to the description of the Atlanteans. 3. The Adites Aad are said to be the oldest inhabitants of Saudi Arabia. Atlantis as described by Plato was destroyed about 11,000 years ago. 4. The Adites Aad are often described as red-haired and this is similar to the mythological descriptions of Atlantis in several places such as in Egypt, Ireland, Winnebago. 5. The Adites Aad had 10 kings who ruled several places around the world simultaneously. This is similar to the story of the 10 kings of Atlantis according to Plato's description in the Critias text. 6. The Adites arrived in Saudi Arabia after leaving the place of the Aad people who were devastated by a fierce wind from a black cloud. This may be similar to the Atlantic disaster. A very majestic capital has been punished by God for the wickedness of its inhabitants by the terrible flood. The story of Ad is recorded in the pre-Islamic tradition, and it is also mentioned in the Quran that God cursed the people for building high places for nothing. The Adites are said to have worshipped the sun by forming the top of the pyramid. This practice led more to the teachings and life of Atlantis. This area is also known as the City of Pillars, or Land of Bronze. Plato described them as the pillars of Atlantis, while their city was a very developed city before being destroyed. It is also said to be very advanced for the bronze trade in its time. In the Arabic tradition, the Adites are depicted as giants, titanium Atlantis in Greek mythology, superior architects and builders who were able to lift large stones. Unmatched even today, the rural tribes of Saudi Arabia regard ancient ruins of extraordinary size as buildings of the Adites, and consider their ancestors, Ad, at a very early age. In the 19th century, the king of the Mussulman tribe kingdom was Shed Ad ben Ad, or descendant and son of Ad. The ancestor of the Arab nation was Ad, the grandson of the biblical Ham. The Adites are still considered to be the earliest inhabitants of Arabia. They are referred to as red men, for their hair color. Some Atlantean records, Egyptian, Irish, Winnebago, describe Atlantis, at least in part, as a redhead. The Adites had 10 kings in different parts of the world simultaneously, the same number and disposition. Described by Plato in his Atlantean account, Critias. The Adites arrived in the area after the former were wiped out by a very large black cloud with the ferocity of its storms. Several records of geological history are clearly recorded regarding the accompanying volcanic eruptions. Destruction of Atlantis. Ad is still the name of a Semitic tribe in Hadramawt province, Saudi Arabia, whose ancestors claim the descendants of their ancestors were Noah's grandson. Ignatius Donnelly, an author of the book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, states several similarities between the Adites AAD and Atlanteans, among others. 1. Are the predecessors of a very old age. 2. Giant. 3. Likes to make large and tall buildings. 4. Likes to worship celestial objects such as the sun, stars. 5. The word Adites is close to the word Adityas, which is a group of Indian gods, and this Adityas can be associated with the Titans, a group of Greek gods where one of them is Atlas, the first king of Atlantis. Generations of Noah's children. Shem, Ham, and Japhet, and they were the children born after the flood. Can we not assume that the 3 sons represent the 3 great races on earth? The Genesis account claims that the Phoenicians were descended from Ham, whereas the Hebrews were descended from Shem. We find Hebrew and Phoenician united by common linguistic ties, common traditions, and common racial characteristics. The Jews were world traders 18 centuries after Christ, just as Phoenicians were world merchants 15 centuries before Christ. In addition, Arabs, popularly classified as Semites, or sons of Shem, claim in their tradition that they are descended from Ad, son of Ham. Written in the 10th chapter of Genesis, they are among the descendants of Ham, calling them Saba, Hawilah, Rama. If the 2 large were called Semitic stocks, Phoenician and Arab, Hamites, it must be the 3rd member of the group belonging to the same race. If the Jews also recognize a branch of the Hamitic racial roots, then we are referring to the Semitic race, which is Turanian, including Etruscans, Finnish, Tartars, Mongols, Chinese, and Japanese. Second, the Hamitic family races, the Red race, including the Ethiopians, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Hebrews, Berbers. Third, Japhetic descent with whiter skin, including Greeks, Italians, Celts, Goths, and those who wrote Sanskrit, other words, the entire Aryan family. If we add the 3 descendants of this race of Negroes, which cannot be traced back to Atlantis, and do not include, according to Genesis, among the descendants of Noah, we have 4 descendants, which are white, red, yellow, and black, recognized by the Egyptians as all. There seems to be some doubt for the Semitic race. It is a different racial class because it is both Semitic and Hamites. As, for example, Sheba and Hawilah, the Mash, or Messic, race is classified between the sons of Shem and the sons of Japhet. If Arya is of the Japhetic race, and if Japhet is one of the patriarch's sons who escaped the flood, then surely, if the Genesis tradition is true, Arya came from the submerged land, namely, Atlantis. According to Genesis, the descendants of Japhet who escaped the flood with Noah were the Ionians, the inhabitants of Morea, the inhabitants of the coast of Cilicia, Asia Minor, the Cyprians, the Macedonian Dodonenes, the Iberians, and the Thracians. These are all recognized today as Aryan, except for Iberia. In fact, there seems to be confusion from Hamitic and Semitic. This is shown in the mixture of Hamitic and Semitic inscriptions in some of the most ancient, in the facilities of the relationship between the Semites of Asia and the Hamites of Egypt, in its unobservable absorption of all the Asiatic Hamites, and in the Semitic adoption of the Hamitic gods and religious systems. It is evident that, in the period not long before, the two families had settled together and spoke the same language. Winchell's Pre-Adamites, p. 36. Would it not be more plausible to suppose that the so-called Semitic race of Genesis was only part of the Hamitic lineage, and that we should look for the great part of Noah's 3 sons in the Turanian race? Francis Lenormand argued that the Turanian race was descended from Magog, son of Japhet. He considered the Turanians to be intermediaries between the white and yellow races, which he later made into each of them. Uzbeks, Osmanli Turks and Hungarians are not to be distinguished in appearance from the most perfect branches of the white race. On the other hand, Chons almost exactly resembles Tongauses, who belong to the yellow race. The Turanian language is characterized by the same agglutinative characteristics found in America, Mongolia and India, with the same absence of bushy beards. The color of the Inca Empire is yellow. Yellow is the color of the imperial family in China. Peruvian religion is sun worship. The sun is God. In Peru, Pachacamac is considered a sovereign creator. Kamak Haya is the name of a Hindu goddess. Haile is a lode of each verse of the song composed praising the sun and the Incas. John ranking comes from the word Allah from the word Haile, as well as the word Hallelujah. The 60-year cycle is used between most of the countries of East Asia, and between the Muiscas of the highlands of Bogotá. Quipu, a cow-tied cable, is used in Peru and in China. Bancroft. Native Races, Volume V. p. 48. In Peru and China, both use hieroglyphs, which are read from top to bottom. Ibid. It seems most obvious to me, said Humboldt, that monuments, methods of calculating time, the cosmogony system, and many of the myths of America, offer striking analogies to ideas from an Asian East analogy that suggests ancient communication, and not only the result of the uniform conditions under which all nations were found early in civilization. Crit. Tom. E. p. 68. In Cambodia's devastated cities, which lie further east than Burma, recent research has found Theoculus is in Mexico, and the remains of temples of the same type and pattern of those of the Yucatan. And when we reach the sea, we meet in Suku, in Java, a teocalli which is completely synonymous with Tehuantepec. Mr. Ferguson said, as we advance eastward from the Euphrates Valley, at every step we encounter art forms becoming more and more like those of Central America, builders of Babylon, p. 88. Prescott said, the coincidence is strong enough to authorize the belief that the Anahuac civilization was to some degree influenced by that of East Asia. And, second, that's such a difference to bring back communication for a very long time. Mexico. Volume E. p. 418. All Appearances, continues Lenormand, Ancient History of the East, Volume 1. p. 64, will lead us to regard the Turanians as the first branch of the Japhet family to go out into the world, and with a premature separation, by being isolated and antagonistic, taking, or rather preserved, completely different physiognomy as this kind of imperfect white race developed. We might consider this yellow race to be the first and oldest of Atlantis and therefore, the farthest reaches of the same source. Then came the Hamitic race, then none other than the descendants of the Japhetic race. About the Ad and Atlantis in a summary of several mythologies. We will be able to find a description of the people of Ad and Atlantis in the most ancient traditions of various races. The great king of Musselman was Shed-Ad ben Ad, or Shed-Ad, son of Ad, or Atlantis. Among the first settling Arabs of the land were known as the Adites, from their ancestor called Ad, the grandson of Ham. These Adites may be the people of Atlantis or Atlantis. They are personified by a king who is considered to be of his ancestral origin, and given several centuries of life after his. In the book, The Ancient History of the East, Lenormand and Chevalier, Volume E. Page 295. They came from the northeast. He married 1,000 wives, had 4,000 sons, and lived 200 years. His offspring multiplied. After his death, his sons Shaddad and Shaddad reigned as successors to Adites. In the past, the people of Ad were 1,000 tribes, each consisting of several thousand men. The great conquest is associated with Shaddad. He was very powerful and authoritative, it is said, all as the predecessors of the Arabs and Iraqis. The migration of the Canaanites, the establishment of civilization in Syria, and the shepherds' invasion of Egypt are, by many Arab writers, attributed to and preceded by this expedition of Shaddad. Ibid. Page 296. Shaddad built a palace decorated with extraordinary columns, and was surrounded by a magnificent garden. It's called Iram. It was a heaven that Shaddad constructed in imitation of the heavenly, which he had heard of. Ancient History of the East, p. 296. In other words, an ancient race that worshipped the sun, with a great procession of ritual worship, then conquered Arabia early in history. They were the children of Atlantis. Their king tried to make a palace and Garden of Eden like Atlantis. The Adites are remembered by the Arabs as a great and civilized race. They were depicted as men of enormous stature, their strength equal to their size, and able to easily move large stones. They were excellent architects and builders. They erected many monuments high out of their strength, and so, among the Arabs, there was a custom to call the remaining large stone ruins the Adi people building. To this day the Arabs say, the Ad. In the Quran they are said to have made in the buildings they built on high places for nothing, phrases which prove that their idolatry is thought to have been colored by the culture of Sabism or worship of the stars. Ibid. Lenormand. In this legend, we find traces of a high civilization, a constructor of great buildings, with an advanced civilization, similar to that of Chaldea, which had a religion similar to that of Babylon. Material progress was aligned with great immorality and obscene rites. The facts this must be true in true history, for everywhere they meet the Ethiopians, among the Canaanites their brethren are from. Quote, also a great calamity that destroyed the entire Adite nation, except for the few who fled because they had left idolatry. Black clouds covered their land in which the whole area was fierce storms and great floods, which wiped out everything. The first Adites were followed by the second Adites, maybe this second Adite people who have escaped from the big disaster. The center of his power is the empire. Sheba. The Adites survived for 1,000 years. The remains of the Adites people can be seen from the monuments in Egypt as well as the Egyptians themselves. Their hair is red or sunburnt. Their large shrine is a pyramid building. Ancient History of the East, page 321. Agatharchides on the Sabian, from the book De Mari Erythreo, page 102, their homes were extraordinarily decorated, and utensils of all kinds, gold and silver, bedding and silver, and all furnishings of astonishing wealth. The buildings they owned were with columns covered in gold, or silver. On the frieze, the ornaments, and the door frame in which they put the gold plates of precious stones. Quote, all this brings to mind one of the descriptions given by the Spaniards of sun temples in Peru. The people there worshipped Phoenician gods with slightly changed names. Their religion was the sun worship chief. It was originally a religion without form, without idolatry, and without the priesthood. Ibid. p. 325. They worshipped the sun from the top of the pyramid. They believed in the immortality of the soul. In all this we see the resemblance to Atlantis. The great Ethiopian or Kushite Empire, which in the earliest times, as Mr. Rawlinson put it, from the Caucasus to the Indian Ocean, from the shores of the Mediterranean Sea to the mouth of the river Ganges, was the empire of Dionysus, the kingdom of Ad, the kingdom of Atlantis. El-Eldrisi called the language spoken to this day by Mara Arabs, in East Arabia, the language of the Ad people, and Dr. J. H. Carter, in the Bombay Journal of July, 1847, said, this is the softest and sweetest language I have ever heard. It would be interesting to compare this dialect to Central American languages. The Egyptian god Thoth was a god who called at Hathas. We turn to another ancient race, the Indo-European family, the Aryan race. In Sanskrit Adam, it means formerly. Among Hindus people call the first person as Ad Ima, his wife is Heva. They live on an island, said to be Sri Lanka. They left the island and arrived at the mainland. When a great natural disaster occurred, their communication with the land of the parents was forever cut off. This is recorded in the Book of India. Here we seem to have memories of the destruction of Atlantis. Bryant said, Ad was the first. The Persians call the first person, Adama. Adon is one of the names of the Phoenician supreme deity, from that comes the name of the Greek god, Adonis. Listed in Arv Genesis or Ar-Ad of the Cushites, now known as Ru-Ad. It is a series of cities connected 12 miles along the coast, filled with ruins of the greatest and most majestic of all times. Sir William Jones says the people were Persians in the earliest times. He said, Moshan assures us that the opinion of his predecessor is that the first king of Iran, and all the earth, is Mashab-Ad, which he received from the Creator, and recorded among several scriptures, in the heavenly language, used by the author Musulman, gives the Arabic title, Dasatir, or Regulations. Mashab-Ad, in the opinion of the ancient Persians, the one who was left behind at the end of the last great cycle of his people. At first the king of Atlantis. The naming seems to be seen in these ancient gods grouped together as Aditya, and in this name, Aditya, we find a strong resemblance to the Semitic culture as Adites, and other stories about Atlantis, or Atlantis. In corroborating this view, we can conclude 1. The deities grouped together as Aditya are the most ancient in Hindu mythology. 2. They were all gods of light, or sun gods. Whitney's Oriental Studies and Linguistics, page 39. 3. There are 12 of them. 4. These 12 deities preside over the 12 months of the year. 5. They are an uptake from a very remote past. Whitney, it seems like this is an attempt by Indian religion to make new developments morally. 6. Direction, which is a change in the character and condition of society, has caused it to fail in the middle, and returns to forgetfulness, although it is not yet half finished and unclear. 7. These gods were called the sons of Aditi, just as in the Bible we find the similarity in the naming of sons of Adab, who were the originators and first musicians. Aditi is not a goddess as the queen's daughter, she is a fair child. 8. Aditya is exalted above all imperfection, they do not sleep or blink. The Greeks regarded as representing God, they were both awake and all-knowing. Their character is all truth, they hate evil. We have seen the same traits the Greeks had for the kings of Atlantis. 9. The sun is sometimes referred to as Aditya. 10. Among Aditya is Varuna, the equivalent of Uranos, who identifies with Atlantis. In the Veda, Varuna is the god of the seas. Aditya represents an earlier and purer form of religion, while in the long spiritual chants of prayer to the other gods, life, wealth, strength, to Aditya is generosity, forgiveness of sins, freedom from guilt, and repentance. Oriental and Linguistic Studies, page 43. Aditya, like the Adites, identified with the doctrine of the immortality of the soul. Yama is the god of living outside. In Persian stories he appears as Yima, and is made ruler of the Golden Age and founder of heaven. Ibid. p. 45. C. Zamna, page 167 ante. Given all these facts, one cannot doubt that the legends of the sons of Ad, people of Adites, and people of Aditya, all refer to Atlantis. George Smith, in the account of the Chaldeans and of creation, page 78, which is elaborated from the Babylonian version, shows that there was an original human race at the beginning of Chaldean history, a dark race, the Zalmat Kakadi, called Ad-Ami, or Ad-Ami. They are a fallen, an opposite race of Mai-Saku, or light race. The fall probably refers to their destruction by the Great Flood, as a result of moral degradation and the wrath of the gods. The name Adam is used in legends, but as the name of a race, not men. Genesis chapters 3:2 clearly says that God created man male and female, and called their name Adam. That is, these people are Ad-Ami, the people of Ad, or Atlantis. The author of the book of Genesis, says M. Schobel, in speaking of people being swallowed up by calamity, always describes them as Hadam, the Adamite man. The Cain race lived and reproduced far from the land of Seth, in other words, away from a land devastated by calamity. Josephus, who gives us an account of the primitive tradition of the Jews, tells us chapter 2, p. 42, that Cain traveled in many countries before he came to the land of Nod. The Bible does not tell us that Cain's race died by calamity. Cain comes out of the presence of the Lord. He does not call his name. Those who are destroyed are sons of Jehovah. Quote, all this shows that the great colony was dispatched by a civilization source before sinking into the sea. Across the ocean we find Guatemalans claiming their descent from a goddess called Atit, or an ancestor who lived for 400 years, and first taught to worship the true God, which they later forgot. Bancroft's Native Races, Volume E, page 75. While the famous Mexican calendar stone indicates that the sun was commonly called Tonatiuh, but at that time it was called the god of calamity, it was later called Atl Tonatiuh, or Adonasiah. Valentini's Mexican calendar stone, Maya Archaeology, page 15. Thus we find the sons of Ad at the foundation of all the most ancient human races, namely the Hebrews, Arabs, Chaldeans, Hindus, Persians, Egyptians, Ethiopians, Mexicans, and Central Americans. Historical testimony shows that all of these races when traced back to Atlantis. It can be concluded that the Adites known to the Arabs were not the first Aad people but were the human remains who survived the Aad disaster and moved to South Arabia. This actually corresponds to the verse of the Quran. And that he is God, who has the Sa'ira star, and that he destroyed the first people of Ad, and the people of Thamud. So there is no one left by him alive. And the Noah before that. In fact they are the most despotic and most ungodly. Surah and Najm, 49-52. And it is possible that the Aad people also have ritual worship of celestial bodies, for example, the star Sirius. If we study the Adites who landed in South Arabia eventually developed into the Sabaean people who we know worship the sun. The 11,000-year-old Göbekli Tepe site, the same as Plato's time of the destruction of Atlantis, also seems to cult the star Sirius. We can see the similarities in the stories that come from the scriptures as follows. 1. According to the Bible, the founder of the Tower of Babel is Nimrod the son of Cush bin Ham bin Noah, while according to the Book of Jubilee the Tower of Babel is 2,484 meters high. This is the tallest building in the world and no one has matched it until now. 2. According to the Quran, the Aad people erected very high pillars which had never been made before on the face of the earth. 3. According to Greek mythology, Atlas supports heaven and earth and is symbolized by towering pillars touching the sky. Father of Atlas according to Greek mythology is Iapetus, who is probably Euphits bin Na. Meanwhile, according to Plato, the father of Atlas was Poseidon, who was probably Sidon bin Canaan bin Ham bin Noah. 4. According to Indian mythology, Kashyap is the father of the Adityas, who are also known as the Devas. Kashyap was probably Cush bin Ham bin Noah, while the Adityas were probably Aads. Kashyap's wives were the children of Prajapati or Euphits bin 5. So the Aad people are probably the descendants of Euphits and Ham. This also fits the biblical narrative where the founder of the Tower of Babel is Nimrod, the son of Cush bin Ham bin Noah. It is also in accordance with the Arab legend that the Adites Aad are the descendants of Ham bin Na. So the Adityas from Indian mythology were probably Nimrod and his people who built the Tower of Babel, which has a height of 2,484 meters. This is what the Quran mentions as the Aad people who built the pillars of Aram, which had never been made before on this earth. And this is what is called Atlas in Greek mythology, which is also famous for its pillars that touch the sky, and Atlas is also the son of Iapetus or Euphits bin Noah. 6. The Aad people are destroyed by the wind according to the Quran. According to the Bible, the Tower of Babel was also destroyed by the wind. According to Indian mythology, Indra, the leader of the Adityas Devas, is the lord of storms and lightning. According to Greek mythology, the Titans, a group of giants of which Atlas is one, were destroyed by Zeus, the lord of storms and lightning. 7. The Aad people are described as people who are proud of their strength and like to torture ruthlessly and cruelly, or it can be said that the Aad people have the characteristics of the colonialists, imperialists. In the Bible it says, God raised Japheth bin Noah and his descendants. And he will live in the tents of Sam bin Noah and his descendants. And Canaan bin Ham bin Noah and his descendants will be his servants. 8. In Indian mythology, the Adityas Devas are revered and worshipped. In Greek mythology, the Titans, of which Atlas is one of them, are a group of giants who had ruled the world. After that, because of the cruelty of Cronus, the leader of the Titan, Zeus held a confrontation and defeated the Titans. In addition to information from Indian mythology, there is a story about the Patala area, which is the area where the Asuras lived. The Patala area is divided into 1. Atala, 2. Vidala, 3. Sutala, 4. Talatala, 5. Mahatala, 6. Rasatala, 7. Patala Nagaloka. One of the areas of Patala, Atala, is very similar to the pronunciation of Atlantis. Aram, or the Tower of Babel, or the Pillars of the Atlas. In Indian mythology there is a story about Mount Meru which is described as very high. And it turns out that in the early 20th century a Hungarian nationality Marek Orlstein found Dunhuang manuscripts, which are thought to be from the 2nd century AD in the cave, 1,000 Buddhas. Interestingly, one of the documents describes Mount Meru as a tower. Could this be the true form of Meru, mountain, which is a very tall tower which is also called Tower of Babel? Aram in Hebrew means shining, i.e., the inhabitants of Aram who have tall buildings. Surah al-Fajr 7. It can be interpreted that the inhabitants of a luminous city have tall buildings. This is similar to the description of a modern metro city. When we turn to Hinduism, we still find this king of Atlantis. In Sanskrit books we find references to deities called Deva Nahusa, whom scholars have identified with Dionysus. He is connected with the oldest history and mythology in the world. He is said to have become contemporary with Indra, the king of Meru, who was also deified, and who appears in the Vedas as the main form of the highest representation. The warm colors of the imagination used in depicting the greatness of Deva Nahusa. For the time he controlled the sovereign affairs of Meru, he conquered 7 Dvipas, and led his armies through all the known countries of the world, by means of unmatched wisdom and miraculous heroism, make his kingdom universal. Quote, here we see that the great god Indra, the chief deity of the Hindus, was formerly king of Meru, and that Deva Nahusa de Nushas, Dionysas has also been king of Meru, and we must remember that Theopompus told us that the island of Atlantis was inhabited by Meropes. Lenormand has reached the conclusion that the first people in the ancient world were the Mero people. The Vedic religion does not recognize idols, said Max Muller. Paganism in India is a secondary formation, a degradation of the more primitive worship of the ideal god. It is pure solar worship, as was true in Peru at the arrival of the Spaniards. It fits Plato's description of the religion of Atlantis. In the religion, Atlantis had reached all the great minds that underlie modern beliefs. They have reached a universal, omnipotent, great first cause conception. Atlantis had worshipped this one god in Peru and early Egypt. They saw the sun as a symbol of this mighty, kind, an apparatus of this one god. Such a conception can only come with an advanced civilization. It is then that science has realized the dependence of all earthly life on sunlight. The people of Atlantis had believed that the human soul is immortal, and that it will come back to life in its material body. In other words, they believed in bodily resurrection and eternal life. They were accordingly embalmed by those who died. Continues on to part 4.